Good evening, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Corey Sanding Show. I'm your host, yours truly, and excited to come at you on this Saturday, this championship Saturday for college football. A lot of good games going on right now. You saw, Texas Tech knock off BYU in the Big 12 championship earlier. You have the SEC championship going on right now. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But first and foremost, we'll be discussing, much as we did earlier in the week, the matter of Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, as many of you know, recently left Ole Miss to become the head coach at LSU, Louisiana State University, leaving behind a trail of flames and a disappointed fan base and program in his wake. Obviously, those of us that know Lane Kiffin and know what he's about obviously know what that's like. So not really much of a surprise to see Lane Kiffin do what he did today and bail out on College Gameday, much like he bailed out on the Ole Miss Rebels, who actually moved up a spot in this week's college football playoff rankings, number 6, ready to make a run to the national championship without their head coach. Was I surprised by the news? No. I mean, once it came out that Florida and LSU were both courting Lane Kiffin to be their next head coach, and they were going to put forth so much money for NIL. It was obvious at that point because we all know what kind of guy Lane Kiffin is. But that's what we're going to talk about. Going to get into some Lane Kiffin, some more Lane Kiffin, Lane Quittin, as I call him in the podcast title. The guest lines are open for you all to call in and voice your opinion, and we'll get to those here in a little bit. But and be sure to check out those in the pinned comment. Those of you who are just tuning in, please go to YouTube, like the video if you enjoy it, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified of when we drop our live content, because we got a lot of big announcements coming up this week. But first and foremost, this show is brought to you by my dog, who will not leave me alone. What do you got in your mouth? Watch this. And of course, she behaves. And I apologize for those of you who have to deal with her. It's better than me dealing with her in person. But we're going to get into what First Take had to say. My friend Paul Feinbaum went on First Take and went scorched earth on Lane Kiffin's ass. We're going to listen to what College Gameday had to say and get into the rumors that surrounded his appearance, or his supposed appearance, on College Gameday. And then obviously we're going to talk some SEC championship football, which is at halftime right now. Georgia's up 14-0. So welcome into the show. I do appreciate you all tuning in, and we're going to get right to it. So Lane Kiffin this week, or as many of you know, last week, took the LSU job and left Ole Miss in a trail of flames behind him. Lit fire to the castle that he had built and burnt the bridge and sat there and let it rot on his way out. Lane Kiffin decided yesterday, after he agreeing to appear on College Gameday, that he was going to bail on this appearance. Who's really surprised by this, knowing Lane Kiffin, knowing the type of guy that he is? Obviously, I've had a few interactions and run-ins with Lane Kiffin, being a former SEC sports reporter over the years. Not a bad guy. He really isn't. That's what was so disappointing about this decision to many of us who watched Lane Kiffin rehabilitate his image at LSU and at FAU, was that the fact that he did so much work to change his image. He laid off the booze, took up hot yoga. Layla divorced him, and they're still ex-wife and ex-husband, so who knows what's going on in that end. But at the same time, in one heartfelt swoop, Lane Kiffin took all the work he had done to rehabilitate his image and threw it all away. Lane Kiffin, this is as Paul Feinbaum put it, and I'm about to show you the clip, this is a vicious cycle in this man's coaching career history. Lane Kiffin, as many of you know, he came to, Tennessee fans know him for all the wrong reasons. As you can see, I attended and graduated the University of Tennessee, so I know all about that. Lane Kiffin, in the wake of his departure at Tennessee, left behind a mess in Knoxville. We all remember the press conference debacle in which he tried to play good guy and tell the Tennessee media why he was leaving. And he's doing the same thing this time around. He's blaming other people. In this instance, he's going on record saying, "Oh, Coach Carroll and Coach Saban, they're the ones I leaned on," and practically implicating them in a decision that he ultimately made. And was it the wrong decision? Would I have taken the LSU job? Probably. Any of us in the sports media space knows that the next job that pays a whole hell of a lot more is much more appealing to the job that didn't pay a whole lot. My first job in sports media, or in media in general, well, it's technically my second job, but my first on-air job paid $12.50 an hour. And I had to beg for that. And this is nowhere near what Lane Kiffin's going to make at LSU. But at the same time, what Lane Kiffin's going to make at LSU, he would have made at Ole Miss had he stayed. And they were going to make as big of a revenue share NIL commitment as LSU. But Lane Kiffin, being Lane Kiffin, saw greener pastures elsewhere and figured, oh, it's time to jump to the next stop, because that's what Lane Kiffin does. Lane Kiffin comes from a brilliant football family. Those of you that remember Monty Kiffin and the Tampa 2 defense, Monty Kiffin was a brilliant defensive mind. In comes Lane's son, brilliant offensive mind. Good, very, very great. Honestly, I would go as far to say he is a great coach. But he hasn't won a conference championship. He damn sure hasn't won a national championship. And with Ole Miss as a top 4 to 6 program heading into the playoff with a real chance to win a championship, Lane could have had a statue in Oxford. And while you sit there and say, oh, well, Oxford versus Baton Rouge, what are you talking about? He ain't going to have no statue in Baton Rouge. LSU is not in the playoff this year. They weren't in the playoff last year. LSU hasn't made the playoff in the entire Brian Kelly era, which obviously just ended. And Brian Kelly is arguably a better coach than Lane Kiffin, or just as good. And they have nothing to show for it. 40-13 shellacking by Tennessee a few years ago. We won't get into that. But Lane Kiffin did what Lane Kiffin does. And I think I'm more disappointed in the fact that, not that he left, because I probably would have done the same thing, taken a better job in a better place, easier to recruit, maybe easier to win a national championship. I don't know if that's exactly true anymore, given the new landscape of college football with revenue share and NIL. Ole Miss has been better than LSU in the past 4 to 5 years. They have. There's just no way around it. But Lane Kiffin is always looking to see if there's greener pastures elsewhere. It's like that one guy that finally gets that girl that he's been chasing after for years. Then all of a sudden, Kim Kardashian shows up and says, hey, I'd entertain this. And then, as most of you know, that usually ends very badly and very abruptly. And that's exactly what happened to Lane Kiffin when he bolted Tennessee in the middle of the night on January 12th, 2010, and went to Southern Cal. 3 years later, Lane never lived up to the expectations at USC. Granted, they had a lot of NCAA sanctions that they were dealing with at that time due to violations in the Pete Carroll era, which Lane was a part of. So he knew what he was getting himself into. He can sit here and say on the new documentary and whatnot all he wants that he didn't know. He knew. He's not dumb. He just couldn't handle going to Knoxville being the guy that everybody recognizes, to go back to Manhattan Beach and be someone that nobody recognizes because there's so many celebrities and so many businessmen, athletes, actors, actresses, so much stardom in LA that Lane Kiffin would fly under the radar. He couldn't do that in Knoxville. And what happened? It was a pretty exciting year when they went 7-6. It wasn't anything to write home about. But Lane instilled a new sense of confidence in the Vols that hadn't been there since the early 2000s. Even in the last few years of the Phil Fulmer era, before they went, below 500, Tennessee wasn't the same. And then Lane Kiffin developed that reputation as the mouth of the South, the new mouth of the South, I should say, because all he did was run his pie hole, and he never backed it up. I mean, he got his introductory press conference at Tennessee. He said, "Man, I can't." He goes on mic and says, "I'm so excited to embrace these traditions at the University of Tennessee, by the way, not University of Tennessee, but Lane's not the most eloquent speaker. The Vol Walk. Okay. Running through the T. Okay. Singing Rocky Top all night long after we beat Florida next year. It's going to be a blast." That line got me. And it probably got most of Vol Nation. And Tennessee, Lane Kiffin went to a boosters breakfast a few weeks later, maybe a month or so later, after, hiring Ed Orgeron as the defensive line coach and recruiting coordinator, hiring Monty Kiffin, his father, as defensive coordinator, which is a very good thing. Rest in peace, Monty Kiffin. Tennessee had everything in front of it. Then Urban, he goes to a booster breakfast, and while TV cameras and newspaper recorders are rolling, he says, "We signed this recruit out of Florida, which is one of the top receiver recruits, and Urban Meyer had to cheat and still didn't get him." So he went on record accusing Urban Meyer in Florida, who had just won a national championship that year, of recruiting violations, and Florida did not commit a recruiting violation, and he was forced to apologize the next day. So Lane earned the title the Mouth of the South. And rightfully so, because he ran his mouth quite a bit. And we go into the season. Tennessee, played Florida tough. I believe 23-13 was the final score. Florida led the entire way, so it wasn't like Tennessee actually jumped ahead. Excuse me. Pardon me. I'm sorry. Then they go to Alabama. At the team meetings at the Marriott in Birmingham, obviously they have their big, whole ordeal with Ed Orgeron throwing an overhead projector at the wall, smashing it into pieces. Lane Kiffin gets up in front of everybody and says, "Hey, listen, man, I've called UT and I've let them know we're going to stay over a day late because we're going to go eat some Dreamland ribs and we're going to go hang out at Alabama's bars after we beat them." Love it. Go right ahead. Granted, old school SEC heads don't love it, but I loved it. But Tennessee did not beat Alabama. Unfortunately, they lost 12-10, and that's one of Nick Saban's best teams in his time as Alabama's head coach, because Terrence Cody, Mount Cody as we called him, blocked Daniel Lincoln's game-winning 44-yard field goal, which he may not have made anyway because he was nursing a quad injury that was pretty severe. But Tennessee had a lot going for it after that year. That's why everybody was so upset when Lane Kiffin left in the middle of the night. He's at the SEC meetings, and then all of a sudden Southern Cal calls and says, "Hey, Pete Carroll left, and we want you to be the next head coach." Probably not smart on their part, given what happened. But Lane, despite loving the job at Tennessee, decides, "I'm going back home." And like I said, I think myself included and a lot of Tennessee fans over the years came to accept the fact that it was his dream job, and he took it. We'd all do the same thing. We'd all probably do the same thing that he just did. But at the same time, we're not leading a group of young men saying we're in this together, we're going to do this together, and then blow it all up when that moment, when it reaches the climax, when the roller coaster reaches the top of the hill. Imagine you're going on a roller coaster ride. You're riding it slowly but surely to the top, getting ready for all that excitement. And then as you top the crescent hill, everything just crumbles and you fall to the ground. That's what Lane Kiffin did at Tennessee. That's what Lane Kiffin did at USC, despite it wasn't his doing, because Pat Hayden fired his ass on the tarmac after they lost to Arizona State in 2013, 61-41. And he deserved it. He deserved it 1,000%. Did he do as good of a job as he could have done with the sanctions they were hit with? Probably. But at the same time, karma gets everybody. And karma got Lane Kiffin for many, many years. He went to Alabama and was a fine offensive coordinator. Probably was a great offensive coordinator because Lane Kiffin's offensive mind is brilliant. Lane Kiffin's coaching skills are brilliant. But Lane Kiffin doesn't know how to be a leader of men. He's got the charisma. He's got the attitude. He's got the fervor to be a leader of men. But when push comes to shove, Lane Kiffin is looking to run out the door just like the next average Joe when they get offered a 5 to 10% pay increase. And in this stage, it wasn't going to happen because Ole Miss was going to match whatever Lane Kiffin got from USC. Corey, Lord have mercy. I've been cleaning all day, you all. Forgive me. From LSU. So, Lane Kiffin was supposed to go on College Gameday today ahead of the SEC Championship and explain his decision to the world. Explain it to the world. Because pretty clear to everybody that Lane Kiffin in the interview with Marty Smith was lying. Pretty clear to everybody when the players from Ole Miss come out and speak out against you that Lane Kiffin was lying when he left Oxford. And as my friend, and I will say this guy, my friend Paul Feinbaum put it, this is what he does. And we're going to watch a clip from First Take this week in which Paul Feinbaum goes on a tirade. He and I are the one and the same in this regard. Looking at Lane Kiffin and wondering, dude, what the hell? You are, and I can relate to this because I've been in similar boats on a much smaller scale than Lane Kiffin, obviously, of having to rebuild your image after you make some mistakes. Countless number of them. I've been there. Done that. Tried to, at least. And I couldn't imagine throwing it all away for a couple more bucks when the couple more bucks would have came to you at that job. So we're going to watch a clip from First Take this week from Paul Feinbaum, Mouth of the South. And then we're going to react on the other side. So we're going to get into it right here, and we'll see what Paul has to say.
Down with Lane Kiffin.
It's just so typical of Lane Kiffin to do something so utterly destructive. And that's what he did. It's hard to believe really almost anything he said there in that interview. If he wanted to coach these kids, as he put it, he could have. And the simple answer is he would have remained the Ole Miss football coach, where he began the season, where he told these young men, we have a chance to win a championship, and they still do. And what does he do? What Lane Kiffin always does. He lights a match to the castle that he built, and he runs out of town in the middle of the night, although this was in broad daylight. It's utterly disgraceful. There's no getting around it. And Lane Kiffin trying to blame others, trying to blame the adults in the room is just so comical. And I'm not terribly enthusiastic when I say all this, Shay, because I've said it so many times before. We talked about this when Al Davis fired him. We talked about this when he walked out on the University of Tennessee after 1 year in the middle of the night, recruiting the players on his roster as he headed to the airport. Remember Alabama, Nick Saban gave him a chance, and that was after he got fired on the tarmac at Southern Cal. Nick Saban gave him a chance, and he did it again by being unprepared for a national semifinal game. Saban fired him a week before the national championship game. He went to Florida Atlantic, and finally a major school gave him a shot again, Ole Miss. He built a program. Last year he would have left he would have gone to Alabama had they bothered to call him, which they didn't. And this year he did the most predictable thing. He walks out on his team.
So that's what I've been trying to say the entire time. And Paul Feinbaum just put it as eloquently as I could possibly state it. Lane Kiffin is always looking to leave. You cannot trust this guy if you are a player and looking to find the coach that has your best interests. because Lane Kiffin only has Lane Kiffin's best interests at heart. And can you blame him? No, you can't blame him. That's the double-edged sword of this whole argument is you cannot blame him, and I probably would have done the same thing. If Barstool came calling tomorrow, I would abandon this ship and I would run. But I wouldn't treat this ship on the way out as if it was sinking, because the Ole Miss ship was not sinking. It was rising. They were number 6 in the country this week. They have a real shot. They're going to get a home playoff game, and they really could win the national championship. Ohio State did it last year as an 8 seed. Now, granted, Ryan Day is the best coach in the country, and, Ohio State had the best roster in the country. Lane Kiffin is not Ryan Day and is not the best coach in the country, but at the same time, Ole Miss this past 4 years has been phenomenal. Best stretch in program history. But then Lane Kiffin on the way out tries to say, oh, I tried, I tried to get, it's Keith Carter's fault. I wanted to coach this team through the playoff, but Keith Carter wouldn't let me. Damn straight Keith Carter wouldn't let you. I wouldn't either. You're going down the Mississippi River to a rival school, and you're going to be poaching players off our roster and poaching assistant coaches off of our coaching staff, which he already has done. And Charlie Weiss is coming back to coach the playoff, which Charlie Weiss is obviously, he's just going to be a extension of Lane Kiffin in Oxford. He's going to be, I guarantee you, Charlie Weiss is going to call Lane Kiffin every night and tell him what's going on in Oxford. And he's going to have that earpiece in his ear, communicating from Lane to the players, trying to get him to transfer to LSU. I have no doubt in my mind about that. Those of you that remember Lane Kiffin's exit from Tennessee, on the way to the airport in the middle of the night, he had Ed Orgeron, who can barely speak, and I don't get me started on Coach O, what an overrated coach he is, calling players, telling them, oh, no, do not go to class tomorrow. If you don't go to class at UT tomorrow, you can follow us to SC. And then Ed Orgeron in front of the cameras and everything at SC says, no, I was asked questions by parents and I gave them an answer. No, you didn't. Stop lying. If you're going to do this, at least be honest about it. And that's the problem that I have with Lane Kiffin, is that he is not honest about anything. The only time Lane Kiffin is honest is when he knows that it'll benefit the image of Lane Kiffin. That's why he did the E60 documentary, The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin, who now nobody will take seriously because he's a liar. And he always has been a liar. Those of you that remember when he got fired from the Oakland Raiders in 2007, 2008, Al Davis, who could barely walk, uses an overhead projector in front of the national media to tell everybody and prove to everybody that Lane Kiffin is not only a con man, but a pathological liar. And that's all he's been. The Ole Miss players have proven it. How many of them have come out and said what Lane Kiffin said is not true? How many of them? You can at least count on one or two hands. That's enough for me. And then we have the College Gameday appearance, which I thought was a joke to begin with, because every single person on that panel, including Nick Saban, who I have interviewed in the past, is represented by Creative Artists Agency, CAA. Not all of them are represented by Jimmy Sexton, but they're all represented by CAA. And those are the people who, during that week, when Lane initially made the decision, said, oh, he should get to coach the college football playoff. He should get to do this. He should get to do that. Call into the guest lines, those of you, by the way, and the comment below, a pinned comment in YouTube, and let me know your opinion. But Lane Kiffin decides at the last minute, the very last minute, that he's not going to do it. And he goes on social media and says, oh, man, it's because I'm out recruiting here in Baton Rouge, man. I can't make it. I agree, but I can't make it. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? You can't make it. You have access to a private jet that you don't even pay for. What are you talking about? You can't make it. You can't make it. Yeah, right. Lane Kiffin knew that despite them sharing an agent, or an agency at least, that they were going to ask him the tough questions that he has no answer for, that he looks foolish answering because he's obviously lying. And he wanted no part of it once he found out that they were going to ask him those tough questions. If it would have been a fluff show, Lane Kiffin would have been on College Gameday this morning ahead of the SEC championship, which I'm going to check the score right now. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. 21-0 Georgia, because Alabama is not good under Kalen DeBoer, and Kalen DeBoer is not Nick Saban, and he'll be fired in 2 years. And then Lane Kiffin's going to go after that job. Lane Kiffin would have left Ole Miss 2 years ago had his daughter said, take the job at Auburn. Lane Kiffin would have left Ole Miss last year to go to Florida had Florida fired Billy Napier at that time. Lane Kiffin would have coveted the LSU job last year if they had fired Brian Kelly. He's always looking to leave. There's no loyalty with this guy. And there's no loyalty with anybody in college football nowadays. And Lane Kiffin is going to be the brunt of it. He was the brunt of jokes in 2010, especially in 2013 when his ass got fired on the tarmac. Private office, then, left on the tarmac, which is just as funny. But, Lane Kiffin, man. I really, really was coming around to like the guy. I really was. The few interactions that we had when I was a reporter were outstanding. And I could relate because I am in the process, at least was for the last year, and still kind of am in the process of rebuilding an image that I unfortunately myself tarnished with my actions. But I'm not going to go back and do the same things that got me in the position that we're in today. So now we're going to react to College Gameday. They obviously talked about it earlier today ahead of the SEC championship. We're going to listen to what they have to say about it because they addressed some of the issues that I've already brought up firsthand. So let's get into this, and obviously we will react as it goes.
Now, you might have seen on social media or elsewhere that we had booked new LSU head coach Lane Kiffin to join us on College Gameday this morning. Unfortunately, late last night, Kiffin decided that he was not going to come and appear on the show. There were several questions that we wanted to ask. Those will have to wait for another day. You also might have seen the E60 documentary, The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin. It documented his compelling and controversial journey that took him to Oxford. It turns out that just sort of set the stage for the bombshell turn, and now it's taking him to Baton Rouge. Was this decision made for, although he certainly had the right to make it. Here's a timeline of how things unfolded. Florida dismissed Billy Napier, LSU fired.
And if you notice, this was in a 7-day span that Florida fired Billy Napier and Brian Kelly was fired from LSU. And then, of course, less than a month after, Lane's already looking for a new job. Like I said, he would have taken one of these jobs last year had they come open. He would have taken the Alabama job had they wanted him, which they didn't because he's oil when it comes to water. But we'll keep watching.
Here's Brian Kelly, opened 2 prominent SEC jobs, both of whom pursued Lane Kiffin. Now, on November 21st, Kiffin met with Keith Carter for clarity on his future coming after the Egg Bowl. Carter told me this week that it had been clear to Kiffin and his representatives for weeks if he was leaving, not coaching in the playoff. November 28th, Florida shifts its focus away from Kiffin, thinking they're not going to win the sweepstakes. Rebels beat Mississippi State. They had to wait on the result of the Iron Bowl, or else Kiffin and the Rebels potentially would have been here to play for the SEC championship game. When Alabama won an advance to the title game, Kiffin accepted the LSU head coaching position and will not coach Ole Miss in the college football playoff. Pete Golding will coach the team, and he was named permanent head coach for the Rebels, the defensive coordinator for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and what choice did Ole Miss have? Oh, an interim coach that's going to coach us to the playoff? That's not going to instill a lot of confidence in the players. No, they just made the best move possible, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully Ole Miss does go out and win it. That would be awesome because Lane Kiffin is a loser, and I'd love nothing more to see him watch his former team win a national championship. We're going to get into what Coach Saban had to say about Lane because obviously big rumor that he had a lot to do with Lane's decision. Let's go into what Coach Saban had to say.
When you get called about a potential job opening and a coach maybe moving.
Well, I think I get a lot of calls because some people view me maybe as a senior professional that has a lot of experience in the game after 50 years.
Well, yeah, that I think legitimately means senior professional. And that's not me knocking Coach Saban. I've interviewed him many times, and he's was very gracious to me, especially as a student reporter. But come on, Nick, come on.
25 years as the head coach. So as a person, as a human being, you want to help everybody you can. You know, I'm kind of in this for the betterment of the game, really for the players. And coaches impact players. Administrators impact players. So anyone who calls me, whether it's a player, a coach, an administrator, I try to do the best I can to give them the best information to make the best decisions for the betterment of the game. The first thing I ask a coach, if he's contemplating changing jobs, is what do you want to do? And I want them to follow their heart in terms of what they want to accomplish and what they want to do. I never tell anybody what they should do. I just try to bring some thought into it so that they can make a good decision for themselves and their family and their future.
What did you?
And honestly, I believe Coach Saban when he says this because he's given me no inclination to believe that he's lying, although I don't know what's going behind closed doors. But Nick Saban, I mean, historically, LSU's a bigger program, it has more resources, more recruits per capita in the state than anywhere else. But at the same time, you know, Brian Kelly, who arguably was a better coach than Lane Kiffin prior to him going to LSU and didn't do anything there. Coach O got lucky and got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and that entire electric 2019 LSU offense. He got lucky. Coach O, I mean, yeah, he's a good coach, but he's not a great coach. There's a reason he was below 500 substantially at Ole Miss before Lane Kiffin came and brought him to be the recruiting coordinator at Tennessee. And then, you know, obviously he rode his coattails ever since. But I mean, Coach O was able to win a national championship at LSU. Lane's probably sitting there thinking, oh, I could do the same thing. Man, let's keep watching.
You think he was I know you talked with him quite a bit. What did you think he was contemplating? Was he close? Did you think he was going to stay at Ole Miss, or was it all along, was it LSU?
No, I think he was very confused. And I think this is the difficult.
He was very confused because he didn't know whether he was going to Florida or LSU. That was the question. And Nick won't admit to this, but I know this to be a fact.
Circumstance to be in. I've been in this situation before where you finish the season, you want to stay with your team, you want to coach them, whether it's in a bowl game or the playoffs or whatever it is, but you feel like you owe it to yourself and your family to at least look at other opportunities and consider them and see if they think that's a better situation for you in the future. And based on the way the calendar is, that never fits together correctly.
You said the calendar. I saw Bob Chesney coach his team last night. I saw John Summerall coach his team last night. Why is that different from Ole Miss?
Because those people.
No, Nick's going to say because those people knew what they were doing. No, because they weren't going to rival schools in the same conference. It's common sense. Down the Mississippi River, you go to Baton Rouge, and it's not even that far. It was an hour plane ride from Oxford to Baton Rouge. I wouldn't let you, if I was Tennessee and you wanted to go to Georgia, hell no, I'm not letting you coach the playoff and poach my coaching staff and players. It's just common sense. And then, of course, all these people going, oh, they don't know Lane Kiffin, by the way, and don't know his history, and say, man, oh, I wouldn't be butthurt. I'd want to win a championship. I'd be butthurt. Sorry. An SEC rival school? Yeah. And it seems like the only person that had a sense of this was Pat McAfee, and we're going to get into what he said here right now.
Same conference. So I think going from a smaller school, no offense, group of 5 school as direct comp about the James Madison.
Good. So we mutually agreed that it would be better for him just to move on. So it is what it is.
Oh, no. I'm going to let you IC Nick Saban because Nick Saban fired Lane Kiffin 1 week before the national championship game, and Kirk Herbstreit called him out for it. So let's see what he has to say about that. I'm going to get into that, and then we'll get into what Pat McAfee has to say.
Here,
but you did tell Lane to leave after the semifinal against Washington. Remember, you're getting ready, and Sark took over the play calling. There was that one example, but other than that, it's
but that was a situation where Lane was struggling to handle taking a new job, hiring a new staff, recruiting new players at a new place, which was Florida Atlantic, and doing his job at LSU the way the players and the rest of the staff thought he should. So we mutually agreed that it would be better for him just to move on. So it is what it is.
You talk about the James Madison job, North Texas job, and then moving up and everything. I don't think their original schools view the next school as direct competition for recruits and also direct competition next year and also in the same conference. So I think going from a smaller school, no offense, group of 5 school to one of the bigger jobs in one of the Power 4 conferences, I think it's viewed a little bit different than Ole Miss coach heading to LSU. But for the reasons that you were talking about there, about are you able to focus and worry about the job at hand, or are you worrying about the future, especially whenever you're going to be playing against this team next year? And I like the fact that you clarified that all along they were saying, hey, if you take this other job, you're not going to be able to coach your team during the playoffs. I think that was something that we heard that he was fighting for. And in theory, I guess it makes sense. But in the reality of the situation, I don't know if LSU wanted him to do that either. Now, granted, if he's just parading around as the next LSU coach and recruiting all his own players to go there, I think obviously that's a nightmare, which is certainly possible. So I think it was nasty. And if you ask all the old college football people, especially around here, it seemingly was inevitable that he was going to go to LSU, is what everybody kind of was saying.
Yeah.
I was just holding on hope that he built his own kind of road down there at Ole Miss.
I'm with you 100%.
And I'm with him 100%. I thought he would stay at Ole Miss. He would have gotten a statue at Ole Miss regardless of what happened. And I think they really could have won a national championship there in Oxford with what he had built. But no, Lane Kiffin decided to do what he always does, light a match, stand on the bridge as it burned, and then run off of it right as it's about to collapse.
Yeah, the one thing I would say about this whole thing is Ole Miss did acknowledge that Lane Kiffin was trying to change their minds in the situation the entire time and really hadn't accepted what they had told him earlier until at the very end. But they said they made it completely clear this was a non-starter for them going to a conference rival.
Yeah, first of all, I thought he should have stayed. I agree with you. I would have wanted to stay there and just see this whole thing out, not just for this season, but just for your career, because he was doing something in Oxford that was very special. And speaking with players and communicating with administrators down there in Oxford, they're just glad that it's all over. It was a lot. It was excessive. And now they have clear vision. They know who their coach is. They're looking forward to the college football playoff.
Yeah, Charlie White's
coming back, which is great. So this is good for them from the standpoint that did they want him to coach? If the guy's leaving, I heard that the players committee was like very emotional and like, if you're not going to stay here, then let's just see who our coach is going to be. They really wanted their assistant coaches to coach them, and he poached some of those guys and took them to LSU with them. But now they have clear vision. They know who their coach is, and they're happy down there.
I think it's normal for administrators to be paranoid. I think anybody that competes against anybody.
Yeah.
But we sat in 2015. Kirby was going to Georgia, Schumann was going with him, and Mel Tucker was going with him. So I'm sitting in the defensive room getting ready to play the national championship game against Clemson. They're recruiting for Georgia. We're getting ready to play the game. But those guys had professional integrity to the players and to the team that they coached all year, and for the opportunity that those guys created for them because of the success that we had. And we went and won the game, and as soon as the game over, they left. So you can do it. It's doable. But everybody's paranoid about this kind of stuff.
Maybe so, but isn't it different for the head coach the head coach leaving as opposed to an assistant leaving?
There's a never-ending.
Yeah, there's a never-ending saga, and that's exactly what it was. Quite frankly, with this situation, is that it would have been hard to pull off. And like I said, Lane would have been coaching Ole Miss for the playoffs while thinking about LSU and while thinking about obviously taking players down to Baton Rouge with him because, he doesn't know how to stick it out and stay one place because that's who Lane Kiffin is. But at the same time, to not bring up Lane Kiffin, we got Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship. And right now, start of the fourth quarter, Georgia's up 21-0. I think it was a given that Georgia was going to win this game. I picked them to win this game. Georgia is not going to keep losing to Alabama like they have been in recent years because Kirby Smart's a way better coach than Kalen DeBoer. And it's no contest, really, to be completely honest with you. I think the worst part about this is that a 2-loss Vanderbilt team probably won't get in the playoff. as annoying as Diego Pavia is, he's damn good at football, but I just don't see it. Even with Alabama with 3 losses, they got to the SEC championship game. They haven't hung with Georgia. It's 21-0. And let's look at the numbers right here. I'm pulling up my phone right now because I don't get a chance to watch it. Oh, shoot. I mean, Ty Simpson's 13 of 22 for 119 and a pick. And some people were saying that he was the first overall pick in this year's draft. And I said that anybody who would pick Ty Simpson first overall has brain damage because Ty Simpson's not that good. Gunnar Stockton's only 17 of 23, but he's got 131 yards and 2 touchdowns, 11 carries for 48 yards for Frazier. So in reality, this is a Georgia defensive masterpiece, and that's what Kirby Smart is known for. What do you have to say? Georgia's going to be top 4. They're not blowing a 21-0 lead with 12:56 to go. And they're going to be the national champions. They're going to be playing for the national championship here in a couple weeks. And Alabama might be too. I don't think Vandy gets in despite having one less loss because they did not make the SEC championship game like Bama did. So ultimately, I think Georgia runs the SEC, and Bama's about to punt back to Georgia down 21-0. What's going to happen? Bulldogs win the SEC once again. Kirby Smart and Ryan Day are 1A, 1B for best coach in the country. And Georgia's going to have a chance for its second national championship in the past decade. Alabama might have a chance for a championship too. But overall, I'm about to get out of here. So before that, I'm going to do a brief read. This show was brought to you by Clean Eats Knoxville, one of my favorite sponsors, probably my favorite sponsor until the next few that we have to introduce. But, we'll get to that this week because we got a lot of big show announcements this week. Brought to you by Clean Eats Knoxville. And with you all right here, I am about to go in and I'm about to do my order for the week because Clean Eats makes it to where I don't have to meal prep. And God, do I love that because I got to lose about 15 to 20 pounds now. I've been kind of putting my health off recently and I kind of regret it. So we're going to go in here to the website and order cleaneats.com. You hit order now. It automatically populates to your nearest location. For me, it's Brookview Center, Bearden, Tennessee, in Knoxville. And let's see what we got here. We got some sticky Asian chicken. Of course, 2 of those. Mashed potato bowl. Well, I will get a couple of these because they are so low in calories and so high in protein that I cannot turn it down. Buffalo chicken loaded tots. Come on now. Anyone with common sense would get that. Cowboy mac and cheese. Saddle up and chow down on smoky barbecue pulled pork spread over cheesy whole grain pasta. We'll see about that. I know I'm going to get some waffles, and I know I'm going to get some Philly cheesesteak, but we'll see about that. You go down here, and you got the premium items, a little bit extra, but of course I'm going to get some bison. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to get me some cowboy mac and cheese. So, all in all, you can still get protein PB&Js, empanadas, shakes, obviously protein powder, dessert bars, cleanwiches, which are so good. I'm telling you, you'll be addicted to those. And my fiance, Savannah, is obviously addicted to the energy bites, the snickerdoodle kind. And I don't blame her for that because she has great taste when it comes to that. Obviously, you can get the hot honey pepperoni pizza as well if you'd like that. But you just go down here, you hit pick up in store, you get a satellite, but I've always done it in store because I like seeing my people. And we go to continue. Obviously, we're going to log in. Obviously, I'm going to do my little thing. Obviously, you ain't going to know my password because nobody knows my password, including my fiance, who I love very much, but she's not going to know my password to Clean Eats. Pay in store. You can pay when you get there. Place order. Boom. All my meals are going to be ready to pick up Monday, December 8th. Clean Eats. It's not just a diet. It's a lifestyle. So those of you that have tuned into the show, I do appreciate it. Nobody tuned into the guest lines, which I had pinned in the comment, which I'm very disappointed in. But at the same, wow, Alabama actually just scored. Let's see. Ty Simpson pass short complete to G. Bernard. Caught at you 23 yards after the catch for a touchdown. And they're still going to get their ass kicked. So I'm going to get off here. I'm going to go watch the SEC championship in the final 12 minutes and 33 seconds of it. thank you for those who tuned into the show. We're going to be live again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, I will have a schedule posted. Those of you that know that we've been trying to revamp the show and obviously launch a website, but obviously it's been a lot of work. And we're going to hopefully reveal that tomorrow night to the rest of you. So thank you for tuning in, you all. I do appreciate you all joining me on your Saturday when you're off from work, when you're supposed to be watching football. Nobody tuned into the guest lines, so I'm kind of disappointed in that, but we'll see what happens next time around. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.